Good morning and welcome back to Compound Conversations. I am Jesse Flores.
And I am Julie Mann. Welcome.
And today we're talking about compounding versus scaling. You know, I feel like just out in the ether, we hear about scaling all the time, or at least I do living in the world of technology.
Yes.
I feel like all I've thought about for the better part of my life is scaling. But scaling and compounding are not the same thing.
Not at all.
Right.
Scaling, I mean, when I think about scaling's a rate,
Yep.
right? Compounding is a structure.
That's right.
And so we have to think about those two things very differently. And if we think about everything that's going on in the AI, I mean, we're all getting AI information overload, right?
Yes, so
but
much.
Every AI vendor, the majority of the AI vendors that are in your inbox right now are all promising scale. Scale your AI, scale your automation, scale the impact, but yet scaling is a rate.
That's right.
So we have to think about those things differently.
And in order to scale, you need to have structures that can scale. I used to say this to people all the time. You can't scale people. You can only scale systems, right? Now, when you have a combination of systems that all work, then the stacking of those systems ultimately is what leads to a compounding effect. And if you take this outside of the realm of technology, and just think about your own physical fitness, for instance. Right. Like you can, by exercising, you will ultimately compound the growth of your muscles.
Correct.
Which will allow for you to do things faster than you could before.
Right. That's a great analogy.
But they're two separate things. You do the work.
Right. You go to the gym.
You go to the gym and you compound your growth.
Right.
And as you compound your growth, you scale just by virtue. Now, if you try to go the other way around, if you try to say, hey, I'm going to lift as much as I can, you're going to get hurt.
Right.
And so
I'm going to go do a marathon tomorrow, but I'm not going to train for it.
Actually, I actually had a friend in college once that did this. He had the idea. And again, we were 20 years old. So you have a different health than you do when you're now 40 years old. Or a little more than that, if I'm honest. But yeah, I remember, so this guy who always did crazy things. He was a goofy guy. He was the kind of guy that, so I was in school in South Bend. It would get very cold. He was the guy that was walking around in shorts and flip-flops when it's February. Right. So this guy. And so he decided one day, he's like, oh, there was a marathon tomorrow. He's like, I'm going to go run that marathon. And he did.
Wow.
And he completed it and then paid for it for weeks.
Yes.
For weeks. And that was at 20 years old. Right. So at the peak of fitness, ostensibly. So you try to scale before you do the work, before you build the system, before you build the structure, and things will break.
Yes.
Do it the other way around. Build the structure, get the reps, do the work. You get scale as a byproduct,
right? And
it happens at a compounding rate.
Right. Yeah.
So how do we do this? Well, the way to do this, the way to build a system, the way to build a structure is, to follow a framework.
Imagine that.
Follow a framework, right? When I want to go to the gym and I want to start training, I don't just show up and be like, well, let me throw some weights on some machine somewhere and start.
Right. I'll do a couple of those. I'll do a couple of those. Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
You have a plan, right? And so you put together your plan, or you work with AI to put together your plan, or you have a trainer that works with AI to put together your plan.
Exactly.
And you follow that plan. And by following that plan, you ultimately get the results that you want. Same thing is true here. So every organization has issues. Every organization has friction. Every organization has problems that they want to solve that make them slower, less responsive, or less productive, or less profitable than they'd like to be. Those issues, those obstacles are signals that something needs to change or could potentially change. Every organization has systems that are feeding those signals. Those systems could be organic, or those systems could be inorganic. And by organic, it means things live in people's heads. Or inorganic, meaning CRMs, ERPs, HRSs, all the other analogies that you spend a lot of money to buy. Right. Put those two things together into a thoughtful design. And once you put together a thoughtful design that will hopefully optimize your work, you build the solution, you deploy it, and you do that over and over and over and over again, you get compounding results.
Right, right. Well, and I think most organizations that think they're compounding are actually scaling.
Interesting.
So like most vendors who say compound, I believe, means scale.
Yes.
And so, for us living now in this agentic world and thinking about work much differently and thinking about outcomes and how we get work done much differently, we really have to be cognizant of what we're talking about. Because I think, again, the vendors who say compound means scale. And we have to understand the difference that we talked about as we opened the show, right? The difference between those two things. Because what actually takes to build the second thing, not just buy the first, right? And you've got to think about what does it actually take to build the second thing versus just buying the first in order to get to that compounding state. And so keeping those two things, at least in our mind, as we go through a day and we think about how the compound framework works, is really being aware of the difference between those two. It's an important point.
Scale should be the byproduct
Yes.
of the work you're doing.
Right.
It is, but very often we think about it and treat it like it's an end in and of itself. It is not an end.
No.
It's a byproduct of having done the reps.
Yes.
In this particular case, the reps are not Jesse at the gym. The reps are the organization's ability to identify signals, map sources, design solutions, build them, deploy them, learn from them, and do that over and over and over and over again. And it really becomes a discipline.
Yes. Well, I mean, scaling means that you do more of the same things with less friction.
Yes.
So, you explain that cycle. We talk about the gym analogy, but what happens, that scaling is, again, it's less friction. When you go into the gym the next time, you don't have to walk around with your sheet of paper that says, do this, like you've got less friction.
A smartphone, by the way.
Right. Yeah. I saw somebody, that's what made me think about it. I saw somebody at the gym the other day, and they were like walking around with like a piece of paper, and you could tell they were intent on and good, right? Because they had a plan.
Yes.
But that scaling for that person walking around with a piece of paper is that they're going to get there. They're going to do more of the same thing with less friction.
That's right. That's right. And that's ultimately when you follow a framework and you start to build out and we make it sound really easy because we say it's just 6 steps. You got to identify the signals and then the source, design, build, deploy. But each of these is a lot of small steps, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, is it that hard to bench press? No, but to bench press a lot of weight gets pretty hard, right? To do that as part of a superset is even harder. And it's the same kind of a discipline you need to be able to imbue your organization with as you're trying to grow. And it's not easy, right? No. It's simple, but it's not easy. You've got to develop new habits, new patterns, and new ways of approaching things if you want to get there. But the nice thing is, if you treat this like an organizational muscle that needs to get built, like all muscles that you try to build, it just gets stronger and it has less friction. So the next time you go to do the movement, it's easier and easier and easier. Might take you quite a while to get your first sprint done. Might take you a quarter, might take you 6 months, it might even take you a year to get to a point where you feel like everybody in your organization is speaking the same language and learning and using the same playbook. But once they do, it'll get faster and faster and faster. And that's when the scaling happens. The scaling happens as a byproduct of you doing all the other work that lets you get there.
Yeah. I mean, scaling has a ceiling. And so when you're scaling, you're going to get to a ceiling and then you're going to hit that ceiling. Hitting the ceiling in the scaling process is, again, different than compounding, right? When you hit the ceiling, you're now, I'm there. I'm done. I've scaled. I've done the thing, right? But that's different than compounding, because compounding is that iterative learning cycle that helps you scale in the next sprint, little less friction. The next sprint, a little less friction. But you're going to continue to go through that iteration. But scaling, again, and compounding, two different things.
Well, I would say that the shape is different, right? So one can scale linearly, but compounding is always geometric, right? And so as you are going through the reps and going through the exercise, and this is where now the gym analogy falls apart, because as you continue to say, oh, we're going to, deploy this agent team here, we're going to train these people in this way, and now they're learning, and now they're building their next set of agent teams, and now all of these things start to compound. What ends up happening is a geometric shift, not a linear shift. Most of us, when we're thinking about growth, right, we're thinking about some percentage over year, relative to the previous year. And almost all of us only think about and picture these things linearly. Now, you could argue, my math friends would argue, right, that if you do a linear percentage year over year, it actually ends up being exponential. Yes, I understand that. But conceptually, that's not how we tend to think about it. We tend to think, and part of that's just being human. It's very difficult to visualize compounding because the rate of the next thing is dramatically bigger than the thing before. One of the things I think would be really interesting, or I've done from time to time, is to go and look at charts of the growth of the internet. And it's mind-boggling to see the rate of, in this case, content production or content creation over time. And go back and look at that. And if you're of a certain age and you remember what it was like to be online, quote unquote, online in the year 2000, and then you look at the chart at any given points between 2000 and 2026, is the year we're in at the moment, would you have predicted, if you were sitting there at 2008, that 2009 was going to look like that? If you're sitting in 2009, it was 2010 was going to look like this. Go look at that scale. And if you're of a certain age, go back and look and just put yourself back into 2003 and just look at the chart for 2004. Could you have imagined that 2004 was going to be that dramatically bigger than 2003? And same for each of the years. And the answer is probably not. None of us could if we could. Well, maybe Mark Zuckerberg could. And Elon Musk could. And Bill Gates could. The people that built the trillion-dollar companies, I guess, could. But most of us can't, right? And so for us, when we're thinking about scaling, we're thinking linearly. We're always thinking about a little bit better. But when you are doing something that can compound, it's not a little better. It is non-linearly, geometrically better. And that's why when you see companies that are now deploying these kinds of systems and technologies and doing it successfully, why their business models are fundamentally changing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, compounding means that every sprint is built on the prior sprint, right? Like what we learned in the last one.
Yes.
So you have that, and that again, that's the compounding factor. When the end of sprint 1 becomes the beginning of sprint 2. Like that in itself, if you just think about the learning, how much faster the learning is once you're using that as, the end becomes the beginning, right? So we've already gone through all of this stuff, right? So now we're starting on step 2.
Yes.
But, to your point on technology, I can't remember what I was reading or whatever, but just, the rate of advance of technology. I mean, you can go back as far as the horse to the automobile, to the telephone, to the internet, to, whatever. Like every single iteration of technology just comes at us faster.
Yes.
And why is that? Think about it. It's a compounding effect of, change, right? The ability to change and influence, but, it's going faster. And I think that's why, especially right now, as we say all the time, like all these, I've got to do the AI thing, right? Because it's coming at us at a rate that's absolutely right. It's coming at us faster than the rate of the internet. It's coming at us faster than the rate of any change that we've seen before. So as humans, we have this innate pressure valve that's going, I've got to do something. I've got to do something. And so, that's the premise behind, our work at Compound is, yes, you do have to do something. We wouldn't debate that at all. Yes, you have to do something, but let's do it in a systematic way.
The paradox is you have to slow down to speed up.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
The paradox is you have to take a step back and approach this thoughtfully and systematically, and then you get the results. What you can't do, and what most of us, I think, are doing, is you impulsively try to grasp at something and hoping that the thing you grasp at is going to be some sort of miracle drug. There are no agentic GLP-1s.
Right.
It's not a thing.
Right.
You still have to do the work at the moment. We'll see if that changes.
Right.
But at the moment, you still have to do the work to get the output. And like all learned behaviors, like all skills, you have to stop and learn, put into practice. And then as you learn, you put into practice, you do get that stepwise function where over time now, the cycles get a little bit faster, the results compound. And then you find, gosh, we didn't, by pursuing the behaviors, we got the scale. But by pursuing the scale, you don't necessarily get the behaviors and you don't necessarily get the scale. And I say this as somebody that has built way too many software products and tried to scale way too many things and realizing that when scale is the goal, you almost never hit it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. You just can't make it there. I mean, that's why the step of source that we spend so much time, even like when talking to new clients and when starting the work, that source, it's hard work, right? I mean, it's like hard to kind of think through what are we actually trying to solve for? But even just that amount of time spent creates the idea of going forward. Like I think it's just fascinating. And I love that. I always talk about aha moments, like with my clients. I'll be like, okay, so, and you can see it when you're working with people and all of a sudden they get this like little aha moment and you're like, got it. Like that's when you find, when they get to that signal and you're talking about, there's always in any organizational structure, there's plenty of problems or opportunities. Like there's plenty of those. But when you take the time to determine root cause and you get there, i.e. the signal, like that little aha is, I think, just so enlightening. And you can use it. And it usually is just something that's like felt and seen. And you're like, there it is. All right, we've got that. And that's the important time to spend. But we don't want to. It's not the sexy part, right? It's like, no, I want the thing, right? I want to push the button and I want everything to show up differently. But it's not going to do that if you don't know what you're trying to do.
No, and by taking a disciplined approach, part of the reason why you get the compounding, to your point earlier, is the output from one iteration becomes the input to the next iteration. In the world of technology, though, one of the things that's really, really powerful is when you're building systems and you're building them in the word we use in a modular way, so that if I build a part of the system that can be used over here, but it can also be reused over there, you get more leverage out of the system because smaller modules can be assembled into multiple blocks. I like to think of the analogy of Legos. Right? If you think about Legos, you're a kid and you got your first box of Legos. There's really only a handful of bricks, right? You've got the little 2x4 bricks, the little 2x3 bricks, the little 1x1, the little 2x1, right? You've only got a small number of bricks. Yet the number of things you can build from those bricks is near infinite.
Right.
When you take a thoughtful approach to engineering your systems, organizing your systems in a framework and in a systematic way where everything is documented and you do it modularly, you're creating those bricks. So you can then take that brick and move it somewhere else. So for example, maybe you've built a project management agent team. Well, you can use that project management agent team for managing development. You can use it for managing production. You could use it for managing procurement. Anywhere where there's a project, that one team can now be deployed. So by taking the time to get that one module right, that the output of that work becomes the input to the next work. So maybe it took you 3 months to get a working agent team to help you manage projects for development. Right. But now that team can help you with 3 or 4 or 5 other things. And that work you already did by doing it once the first time, right? So this approach of slowing down and going step by step by step and using the output as the input to the next one, again, it's not sexy and it's not easy, even though it is simple. But it's what allows you to get that convex curve.
Exactly. And when you get to, I'm just going to pick, when you get to sprint 4, now you've got a visible gap, right? When you've gone through that, and now not only do you have a visible gap for your organization trying to do sprint identification and keep that going, right? End to beginning. But now it's really starting to become visible in the organization. And what organizations then find is like, this is now a bit of my competitive advantage.
It should be. 100%.
Yes. And so if you're taking that time, which is driving your competitive advantage, what's going to happen to your P&L, right? Which we talk about all the time. But that's the reason that you spend that time. But it becomes visible. And, now you've got a cape and superpower when you're working on your Legos, right? But those are the things that are really where you see that payoff. And isn't that, in essence, isn't that what every organization is looking for, right? When they're looking at buying AI, they want to do it because they want to have a competitive advantage over the other person that they're working at. They want to do it faster. They want to do it better. There's a need there for competitive advantage uptick.
Yes.
But we're not going to see that right away visibly. But once it gets there, bam, it's powerful.
And you're generally not going to see it if your approach is tool acquisition.
Correct. Right.
And in particular, the larger your organization gets, the more that the allure of tool acquisition might feel, but it actually is a siren song. And I think that most operators that have grown a company of a significant size intuitively know this, because once you start managing people, right, and you begin to realize very often people are the bottlenecks, for better and for worse.
Right.
I think that's part of the reason why so many people end up being skeptical that AI can deliver the results for them. It's because they're so focused on tool acquisition.
Right.
And now more and more tools are offering agents, but if they've not gone through the reps, they're like my friend who tried to run the marathon. Right. And maybe they got something out of it, but they're going to feel a lot of pain afterwards. But if they go through the training, they go through the process, they bring their people along with them, the organization itself gets stronger, and you get the compounding and the scaling as a byproduct.
Right. Well, most organizations, I think, look at Sprint 1 and they see the agent, they see the workflow, they see the time savings, but these are outputs. Those are outputs. And so compounding looks at the infrastructure of Sprint 1 and what the Sprint 1 leaves behind, the infrastructure that it leaves behind, not these outputs, right? I mean, the outputs are real.
Yes, the outputs are real.
But
the infrastructure is what compounds.
Exactly. And so that's the part where you've got to make, again, that distinction, just to say, okay, the AI, the tool, the agent, the workflow, these are outputs. If you're going to get to that point, like compounding in Sprint 1 leaves behind a new infrastructure, which...
And to be clear, that infrastructure isn't 100% technical. The development of your people is part of that infrastructure. Right. And it's very easy to assume that by infrastructure, we mean data pipelines, we mean systems, we mean technical systems. Humans are part of that system as well.
Absolutely.
And so part of that infrastructure is also reinforcing the learning. And so if you're one of those leaders who already has a culture of learning, that's great. You're going to continue to compound. You already probably see it in some respects, but you're going to continue to compound. If you're one of those leaders, though, that discourages it or doesn't actively promote it, or worse, penalizes your people when they make mistakes, then you're introducing to that infrastructure, you're introducing some cracks that, again, under enough load, it will break.
Right. Yeah, you've got to be sure that organizational environment encourages that learning. Because if you come out of Sprint 1 with that infrastructure, but then you have a culture that won't let the infrastructure grow, then you're gonna hit friction again. So you've got to be sure, and that's not easy, right? I mean, to be sure that people feel comfortable. We talked a lot before we got on this conversation just about curiosity and just the importance of curiosity. It's like so critical with this because AI will give you a lot of information, but we've got to be sure that we're looking at that as humans to say, do I have enough wisdom to say that this is right or wrong so that when I get to, again, my compounding infrastructure, I've made some thoughtful human decisions and judgment calls along the way. It's very important. Like, humans are not going away. Neither are jobs. So we've got to be sure that we're thinking about those things when we're thinking about that infrastructure build.
Yeah, because the nature of work to that point is dramatically changing.
Oh, yes.
It's dramatically changing. And I'll tell you, as somebody who manages a lot of agents and a lot of agent teams and as people that are managing other agent teams, the nature of work is very different. And I'll tell you too, as somebody who does this on a daily basis, I mean, I think right now on my other computer right now, I've got, just from what I can see on the screen, there are 12 agents right there, all doing different things. And I'll tell you, it's exhausting, right? It becomes a different skill because now instead of me being able to zone out for a little bit of time while I'm doing a task, I actually have to be cognitively engaged. And that, by the way, is like its own battle. Because I get tempted just as much as the next person to be like, I don't know, I'm tired. Just yes. Whatever you say, yeah, sure, yeah, it's fine. But again, that's not exactly the way to approach this, and I know that you shouldn't do that. But it is part of how we as human, our roles do start to change as the infrastructure starts to change. It is a new type of work. It's a new way of working. I would argue it's a more human way of working, writ large. But what it isn't is a human sitting around next to a tool, just yep. You are the smart tool. I am just the dumb human. Like I will do that's not appropriate. It's not going to be great for your organization long term, and it's not ultimately how you compound.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not how, I think that's a really good example. I mean, you think about, I'll just use this morning, right? Like, the minute I woke up, I was like, okay, I don't have an agent working on something. So before I even go to get coffee, I'm like, let me kick this off so I can have this work being done while I grab coffee. And, you think about, it reminds me at one point in time, I had like an hour commute to work. And it took me a little bit to figure out, but I was like, okay, how do I make this 2 hours productive? And so I would sit there and think, okay, out of all of the phone calls I got in, I would categorize them by time zone so I could figure out who I could call on the way home, who I could call on the way to work, so that when I was at work, I was engaged in my work, right? And that's a little simple workflow for getting the work done. But you're like, how do I optimize this time? And we're in that exact same frame now. It just looks different, right? Because you have agents who are doing work while you're doing other work, but you have to remember, I'm going to kick this one off. I've got to respond over here. But you have to think about that as your workflow.
That's right.
Because, once you get to sprint 2, things start looking differently, right? Because you've learned from sprint 1. But the way in which we do work in the agentic day that we're in is going to be a learned behavior. Because you've got I've got to keep this going. I've got to keep this going. I've got to keep, it's like, I got to get the laundry going. I got to get the dishwasher started. I got to, we all understand that, right? We do that every day, right? I got to get the trash out. There's all these things I have to do. But, when we start introducing the compounding effect of getting that going, you're going to do the same thing.
Well, it's actually kind of funny. We don't think about this way. I love your analogy, but dishwashers are a form of automation.
Yes. Yeah.
Washing machines are a form of automation. At some level, I think an oven is a form of automation. A microwave is a form of automation.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
We already live in a world where we automate all of these things.
That's a great analogy.
My Roomba is a form of
exactly.
automation.
Yeah.
Right? All of these things already exist. So at some level, maybe we are more used to it than we think. Those, I think, require less they require considerably less cognition than managing a team of agents, but the habit is pretty similar. But it's a learned habit, and in the same way that not every house has the same dishwasher or washer or dryer or toaster or microwave, because different people have different needs and different preferences, different size houses, different number of people in the family, whatever those things are.
Right.
No two companies will have the same agentic framework or the same agentic organization. Everyone's automation needs to fit their particular business. And the way that those agentic frameworks fit the business is by going through a thoughtful process of signal, source, design, build, deploy, sprinting, in order to continue to find the next opportunity to build robust infrastructure. So now that I have automated my dishwashing, I can take that time to go and find a new dryer or a new washer. Now I've automated my washer. Now, while my washer and my dishwasher are moving, I can go find a new dryer. And by building on top of these automations, I can get more of my household management done. Same thing happens here. By building more and more of this infrastructure, I can get more and more of my work done.
And it doesn't mean it's going to go away. You know, again, I was talking to somebody the other day. We were talking about washing laundry, right? And it was kind of like the same conversation. It was just like, you know, back in whatever, we've never gotten rid of doing laundry. Man, I wish we could. But laundry's not going away. Laundry is never going to go away. Hate to be the bearer of bad news, everybody, but laundry's not going away. But what we are doing is we're going to find different ways to get laundry done, right? But laundry's still going to be there. We're not going to use whatever those
washboards.
We've moved from washboards to washing machines, but we're not going to get, and there's automatic loaders, and there's things that move. Like, there's all these kind of things, and it's going to continue to develop. But, you know, I was having this conversation, they were talking about AI, you know, the whole AI is taking our jobs. I'm like, no, AI's not taking our jobs. We're still doing laundry. Like, and that's not going away, right? So we've been in a process, and we're going to continue to be in a world of increased technological advancement. And we're actually very grateful. Like,
100%.
I'm very grateful. Like, I'm very grateful for that. But we don't have to fear change. Change is not going to stop. But understanding the framework that we talk about with Compound, we've got this framework that you can walk through, that you might have to walk through a little faster as we continue to go forward, but at least you've got a foundation to build off of as you're trying to work through implementation to get to a compounding effect.
That's exactly right. Couldn't have said it better myself. Julie, this is amazing. I always love our conversations. I think for those listening, the important takeaways: scaling and compounding are not the same thing. You chase scale, you don't necessarily get it. But by following a disciplined process and trying to compound, you often get scale as a byproduct. And the more you go through those reps, the more you go through that process, the faster you get as a byproduct of doing the work, the less friction there is as a byproduct of doing the work. Because the more infrastructure, human and non-human, you build, the sturdier that foundation, the more you can put on top of it. And I wish I could tell you there's a magic pill. There is no agentic GLP-1. You have to do the work. You have to do the framework. But if you do it, you won't be disappointed. It will compound.
It compounds. All right. Well, Jesse, this is another great conversation. Everybody for listening in. We're so grateful for you joining. We love having these conversations. Like, we genuinely love having these conversations, and to be able to share them with everybody means a lot. So anyway.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a wrap. So until next time, let's stop transforming, but let's start compounding.